Okay, welcome to this is now the fifth episode in the Ancient Wisdom
Wow.
series. Took a little break last week for the new baby. My sister had a baby, and so we paused to soak her up, and we're back. And this week we have Rachel Brumberger with us. She is an acupuncturist and a wealth of knowledge. I'll give a little bit of the background of how I got to know Rachel. But without any further ado, here is Rachel, and thank you so much for
Hello.
coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so when I reached out to Rachel, well, let me back up. I know Rachel because I used to work for her as a receptionist at her wellness space. It was a co owned space, and it was at a time when I was working on writing my book and I needed a part time gig, but not just any part time gig. I wanted to be in a spiritual, healthy space. And Third Space Wellness opened its door for me. And, oh, so thankful for that.
It was
They have
so
since
good.
moved on, and now she has her own thing going on. So I'll let her tell you about that. But yeah, that's how I know Rachel. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about, the history of traditional Chinese medicine. And then more specifically, we'll get into acupuncture and who can benefit from it and all that. And we have a little visitor. Hi.
My visitor is having an issue with her speaker.
Go for it.
Sorry, hold on one second.
So, Rachel, if you would like to introduce yourself a little bit more, any, little background, historical info about traditional Chinese medicine before we
Sure.
get into the juicy stuff, that would be awesome.
Sure. Before we get into the juicy stuff. Well, thank you, Nina, for having me. And it is really nice to see your face again because it's been a while since the pandemic happened. We
I
weren't
know.
all able to stay as face to face as we had all hoped. And um it was definitely, I do think the universe spoke really beautifully when she brought us together. So it was perfect timing for your title. um, okay, so brief history of Chinese medicine and Asian medicine. I mean, essentially, this is medicine that's been around for thousands of years. So you can really, some people will say 5,000, some people say 3,000. The texts, the earliest texts that we have are about 2,000, a little over 2,000. So when you walk back in time, pre the ability to write things down, we had the medicine before it was able to be written down as well. And then what we have written down has been about 2,000 years. So when we're talking about Asian medicine and this traditional medicine that's been brought through that and well well preserved as well as enhanced over this period of time of 2000 years, we're talking about something that's one of the oldest medicine systems in the world. um Older than, I mean, I think, though, to my knowledge, the only other older medicine system that I've heard of written down is in Ayurveda. So we have
Hmm.
obviously so many good wisdom traditions from all over the world. There's Mayan medicine that's probably also about the same age. So it's, I think, really important to that when we think about medicine, because a lot of us think about it in a modern context, we're thinking about people all over the world healing themselves in their villages, tribes, people, communities for thousands of years. And that's where this one comes from.
Yes, and that's what I love about the ancient medicines. I've mentioned it in the previous episodes, but we often refer to these modalities as alternative, and I
Right.
I dislike
I
it
don't
so
un-
much.
I get that. I I I understand that why you're like that's
Yeah,
a little bit cringeworthy sometimes,
it
right?
is
Like,
just like,
I know.
but I mean, in terms of how we have access to it, it's not always accessible through
Right.
insurance. So it
True.
kind of is an alternative form here, but
Right.
yeah. So,
Yeah, it comes under, like, the way it's currently housed is complementary and alternative. And I mean, I'm sure we could have an entire conversation about that. I've also heard people say new age, and I'm like, this is older than anything new. A lot of a lot of medicine traditions are. I mean, from any indigenous medicine is older than that and not at all new. Um, and anything that came from sort of, huge dynasties also is not new. So I mean, complementary and alternative, I do think has to do with that. We've all moved to more industrialized medicine for the systems that we use with insurance, and it is fascinating, the language around it, for sure.
Code for frustrating.
It's hard. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really tough. Yeah, it's tough that um it's unfortunate that there's been a break. I think I think it is unfortunate that there's been a break from what um every culture in the world brought to medicine to where we are kind of in modern medicine, that there was a break there that had us all feel like we were in two different camps is kind of a missing.
Yep.
I guess we can just work on repairing it. I guess
Yeah.
that's, I mean, a lot of us are doing that work to bridge that gap.
Hmm.
So,
I love that. So, could you tell us a little bit about how you personally took this path to where you are
yeah.
now?
Yeah. So I'll give you the short story because it's otherwise long. But essentially, I came to it in this sort of perfect serendipitous intersection of I did want to make some adjustments in my career. And I was looking really, really rigorously at what that was going to be and what one on one setting was I going to be able to be really doing meaningful work with people. And so I was looking at social work, I was looking at all kinds of things of that nature. And at the same time, I was in this breakdown with my own health and like my mental health, my physical health. It was all messy. And it had been for years. It was just sometimes, at various points in our life, things can kind of take an uptick in discomfort. So I'd had these same symptoms for years. It's just that they would ebb and flow in terms of their severity. And at that point, that I happened to be looking at what I wanted to do in the next expression of my professional self, I was also having a really hard time with my own well being. And I serendipitously reconnected with a friend it was a reunion for our college a cappella group who was in the acupuncture program at the school I ended up at. And she was in the student clinic and she's like, you should come see me in student clinic. And I was like, yeah, I've heard that's great for stress acupuncture. I've heard really good things, had never done it. And yeah, totally changed my life. That was like a moment in time where I think, everything lined up in just such a way for me to have exactly what I needed. And it was actually Trish, as her name, encouraged me to check out the school professionally. She's like, I think you would like this. I think you'd be good at it. I thought that was hilarious because I had no intention of sticking needles in people. Here we are.
Here we are.
It was totally perfect. It was really the perfect fit. And I had grown up down the street from the school I attended. I had no idea it was there. It had been there the
Whoa.
whole time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow,
So
I didn't actually know that story.
yeah, yeah,
Huh. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
It was right
So
there.
it was right there. And I mean, I literally used to go to the post office with my dad in the same building that the original school was located in. So funny how
It's
things
funny.
go and line up.
Very funny.
And yeah. And obviously all of us can kind of look back at our lives and go, in hindsight, that all makes sense. Like
It
how it lined
lines
up. It
up.
just
Mhm.
took a minute to get there.
Yeah, and I mean, you maybe weren't ready at, before that
Exactly.
moment. Maybe you wouldn't
Yep.
have been as receptive to that
I
invite,
think so. I think so. Yeah.
So yeah. So I had acupuncture with Rachel and the other practitioner, and it was my first time getting acupuncture. And I will say, what I heard about acupuncture before from people was like, it's really like a sterile, clinical kind of environment. And I was like, okay, I mean, I know it probably helps with pain and things like that, but I didn't have much more knowledge than that until, I did it for myself. And the way that you guys do your practice is like magical. So it's so
Thank you.
healing and like warm, and it's holistic. It's just like touches on all points. Um, so for people who think like acupuncture is like in a cold like doctor office setting, it doesn't always have to be like that. That's just what I thought of it. But so who could benefit from getting
Hmm.
acupuncture? Like, what is the
Yeah.
realm of
I
possibilities of who could be seen?
I always feel like people are gonna be like, sure, you're biased, but like really everybody. 'Cause it's whole system medicine, it's whole
Yes.
person medicine. And I think that's um really important to know. So, right before, right in our modern world, we're discovering new things about medicine all the time, right? So, I mean, I haven't looked this up, but I just heard it the other day from a patient of mine who is going to see a neurogastroenterologist. Like this is I have no idea how long people have been able to study in that specialty. I'm so excited that I'm hearing it now. I'm like, oh, yes, we now have, right, gut people
The gut
and
brain
brain
link.
people, gut brain people. Like this is, and how exciting. And I'm sure there are incredible doctors who've been doing that work for years and we just like haven't heard about them yet. But I mean,
Hmm.
ultimately, I think there's a tendency in sort of I'm saying like our modern thinking, because we can accidentally in modern thinking be very piecemeal about things. I know we don't mean to be, it's just
Yeah.
how we've evolved to kind of think of things in parts.
Hmm.
um, and and because of that, in modern medicine we get to see these enhancements that come to us in parts actually a little bit. It's like we get these specialties with, you know, neurologists who are also cardiology people, and we have all this like cool intersecting now. Before that in medicine, even in what we now know as modern medicine, even before that, there were more generalists. There were more family practitioners who would come to your home and use homeopathy and prescription medicine, and if you needed surgery, get you to the right place for that. So what I love about Asian medicine is it is whole body focused. It always has been. And even though we can specialize, like some of us do specialize in different, um, I do a lot with digestive health. I do a lot with women's health. I do a lot with anxiety and depression. A lot of us have interests and experiences in our life and learning that have like kind of drawn us to particular aspects. Like we are all trained to go head to toe. And it's not just that we're trained to go head to toe in the way we may think of that again in sort of our current daily lives. Like, oh, okay, so you know what I mean when I'm talking about my cardiovascular system. It's like the way that we diagnose is whole body. We don't make a diagnosis about just the system of the heart or just the system of the digestive tract. We're making a diagnosis, whereas some of the symptoms that we see in sleep line up with things that are happening in reproductive health or back pain or digestive stuff that also shows up in the muscles and the joints. So it's not even just that we happen to look at the whole person. It's like the diagnostic model is the whole person. It's very cool.
It's
And I
fast.
love that.
It's like all
It's fascinating.
encompassing.
It's all encompassing. It's
Ah,
completely like because there's no separation between the mind, body, and spirit. We don't
yeah.
have that. That distinction doesn't exist in the medicine to be like, oh, if you have physical pain, we know eventually that's going to show up in the emotional realm. We know eventually that's going to impact the spirit realm, the way the person is enlivened and how connected they feel to the world and the people they love. There's no way around that. So, and we know vice versa too,
Yep.
that if
Hmm.
there's a if there's a if there's a pain point in the emotions or there's a pain point in the spirit and the expression of the spirit, that eventually we're going to have something physiological to accompany that. So there's no way to just look at just part and treat just part. I mean, if someone's in if in any of those realms someone's in a great deal of pain and it's making it really, really difficult to connect anywhere else. And we can kind of like zero in for a minute and just address that. But ultimately, we're going to be addressing the whole thing. Otherwise, we're going to have continued disease.
Yeah.
We all
And
know that. Everyone's trained like me. Know we all know that. We know that if we
yes.
don't deal with the root, the person's just going to grow new branches somewhere else, and they're just going to keep suffering.
Yep. And that's what, I think people who are a little skeptical or weary of the alternatives,
Hmm.
they get really upset when you say things like Western medicine treats symptoms, it doesn't get to the root. They're not trained that way. The Western
Right.
doctors just aren't trained in that. And they get really upset when you tell them. And why do you think that is?
I mean, I think we have also a lot of like, I think there's a lot of places to grow in the language about the way we talk about like what are doctors doing, and then what are like Asian practitioners doing, and what are Ayurvedic practitioners doing, and what are so et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like I know a lot of great doctors that do want to get to the root. They totally want to get to the root, and their system of medicine, the root, maybe, for example, like let's say, here's an example of where I think we have a version of a root in a Western thinking, like mitral valve prolapse. That is a prolapse of one of the valves of the heart, the actual heart muscle, right? And if somebody's going to see a cardiologist and they're really fatigued and they're having trouble sleeping and they're low energy and maybe their color's off and their pulse is starting to do something funky, the root may be the mitral valve prolapsing and not sufficiently moving correctly so as to effectively pump, right? Okay, so they're also, I think, trying to get there. And then we repair that surgically, and it helps with some of those things. However, the question is, well, why was the prolapse there in the first place? So, okay, that's the thing. Some people, it's congenital. Okay, cool. All right, it's a congenital thing. So then someone in my system of medicine is going to be like, so what else are we seeing in alignment with that congenital thing that this person walked into the world with? Are there other places where things are sinking a little bit? Are they are they like are they prone to sinking? Are they prone to things starting to droop and not hold up? And then other folks who didn't come into the world with that congenitally, who developed that over time for some other reason or whatever, a wonderful cardiologist would tell us about that. We're still looking at where else are things falling and not holding up or opening and closing correctly. And that could be emotional, physical, spiritual. So it may be also in their digestion. Like we'll see sometimes that same category of person may be more likely to have hernia, maybe have digestive things, may have other issues related to sleep that had them fatigued such that some of the muscles and things are starting to not work all the way. That's it's just a different, I think, access point to a root because we're we're generally trained to be going head to toe, all body systems, all of the places where disharmony can show up, looking at people and nature and the way we are attuned to our nature and the way we're
Mm.
moving smoothly through it, the way we're handling the seasons, the way we're handling the seasons of our life. And I don't think that we are I think our lens is just a little bit more zeroed in when we're in that modern Western medicine. We say Western, I mean, we're really just saying modern.
Mhm.
It's Western thinking, modern thinking. But that zeroing in of looking at things kind of in a petri dish where it's like it looks like this. And I think that's probably the main difference. It's is like in modern our modern thinking is to like do this, and the uh, more ancient wisdom traditions are going, and that's probably like I think that's a fair way to say which lens are we looking at, the one that
Yep.
blows it out or the one that zeroes in.
Right.
They're both important. They're
Yeah.
just important for totally different reasons, and we need
Yeah.
both,
No, we definitely need
you
both
know.
for
Yeah,
sure. I mean,
but yeah, it's a totally
traumatic
different.
accident, we want the modern medicine for sure. Um, you know,
Exactly.
I think it's a little triggering for people when you say things like, well, the root of this
Yeah,
disease or this ailment could be an emotional
it can be
issue.
triggering. Yes, it could be
Yeah.
triggering. People may not feel comfortable hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Yeah.
know that actually, because a lot of people end up in my office when their doctor has said, there's nothing wrong with you on paper. It's in your head. And then it's like,
Mm,
ouch.
yeah.
Now, what do we mean when it's like, well, that's a, that's a really, that's a hard category to fall in. I've had that. I've had doctors say that to me. It was like heartbreaking. And I felt really frustrated. So sometimes it was heartbreaking. Sometimes I felt unseen. Sometimes it was triggering. Sometimes I was furious and full of rage, just depended on the situation. And
Yeah.
it's painful because then people don't know what to do, especially if they're like, but I don't feel anxious, or I don't think I'm depressed, or what do you mean it's in my head? So um so then we have to maybe broaden what we think of when we say emotions.
Yeah.
And I think
I
if
don't think we
we
have the language for it.
I don't think we have the language for it in our sort of culture, the way
Yeah.
we also, I don't know, that have the I'll say like this, like I don't know that we have the stomach for it. Because
Mm.
look at, if we were, I'll just like, okay, there is a lot happening in the news media. There has been a lot happening. It is, in my opinion, absolutely time we look at it really, really on purpose, with the most open of ears. And there's a lot of emotions. And I think a lot of us are equipped to be like, that's fair and appropriate. Of course, there's a lot of emotions. This is painful stuff
Mm-hmm.
happening in communities that are feeling unsafe, right? And then some other people who are like, don't want to hear the emotion around that. That's not, so I don't know that we as a culture could stomach that, like, these are all healthy, like, we should get angry about things when they're not
Yep.
right. It's okay to grieve about things when we lost them. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to be worried. And it's totally okay to be terrified. These are all human emotions
Mm-hmm.
that are totally natural.
Right.
And lots of medicine systems know that. Our Western medicine knows that too. That's why we have mental health. And that's why sometimes, but as a culture, we seem to have a hard time stomaching that.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Getting
everybody,
honest.
obviously, not everyone. Probably
Yeah.
not those of us listening right now. It's just
Yeah. If you're here, you're probably you're
probably not,
probably
probably not you.
okay.
But right, but that's like, but I do think culturally it's difficult for people to be comfortable with that. We have sometimes really big emotions as humans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the labeling of negative emotions and positive emotions, I mean,
Yeah,
we know that holding on to the anger
right.
and those things for too long is going to cause issues within the
Yeah,
body, but it doesn't
absolutely.
mean it's unnatural for it to occur.
Right. And if they don't move, it's exactly what you said. It's if they get stuck, that's when we have an
Hmm.
issue. The idea is that they move. If they move, we can move.
Yeah. I
So
remember when I was in high school, I was having such bad stomach issues. Like, oh
the
my
worst.
gosh, like, and like no doctor could figure it
Yeah.
out. And it was always like there's nothing. And I'm like, there is something, like I am in pain. I'm vomiting all the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
this can't be normal. And one doctor, he said, "Oh, you're just too stressed." And I left out of there. I was so angry. I was like, Mom,
Yeah.
I'm not going back to him. How does stress cause stomach pains? He doesn't know what he's talking about. I was like, he is lazy, he's going on. One, he was correct, because when I look back, I'm like, that was a interesting time. It was this like a lot going on, stress
Right.
inducing, and there was
Sure.
so much inflammation in the stomach. Like he was correct,
Yeah.
but I had nowhere to go. Okay, it's stress,
Well,
but like, how do I deal
yeah,
with that?
right. Because we didn't, I mean, I think, and you and I both grew up in this, and I do think it's actually better for the next generation already. I, I think, at least I'm seeing it in my daughter and what she's getting. Um, so if somebody says you're too stressed, but then they don't maybe have the clock time to walk you through that, or there's not their specialty, that's not
Hmm.
where they have their toolkit. or they don't know why, right? That wasn't part of the intake they did about your vomiting and your stomach pain. You know, they want to make sure your stomach lining was healthy and your esophagus was like looking the way it's supposed to look. Okay, so then what? That leaves the person with like, well, what is that even? What is too stressed? What's the right amount of stress? What are we stressed about? So these are the things I'm interested in when I'm talking to my patients. It's like,
Yeah.
like, well, stress for one person is not the same as stress for another person. There's not like a bag of stress and everybody fits in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, so yeah, a lot of times, a lot of physicians are correct to be like, it's stress. And it's like, but if we don't know, if we haven't learned throughout our childhood to like pinpoint what does that for me? How do I get myself that way? In what scenario am I comfortable and in what scenario am I not, based on like the virtues I came into the world with, the things that are important to me, my commitments, how safe I feel in any given situation, right? Like
Yeah.
lots of that safe means something else to everybody. That could mean a
Yeah.
roof overhead, that could mean food, that could mean sexual well-being, that could be, I mean, et cetera, et cetera. That there's so many, what does safe even mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's
Yep.
nuanced. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, at the time, I didn't get any further help with said stress because
Right.
I don't know, it was like a junior in high school. I didn't
Yeah.
really know too many holistic approaches to anything.
Right.
But as we know now, stress is a huge cause. Probably
Huge.
one of the biggest causes of disease. I feel comfortable saying that.
It's and yeah, that is a I think we could look up that statistic that I used to have it on the tip of my tongue. There is a statistic of like X percentage of diseases or lifestyle diseases.
Mhm.
Essentially, um, various forms of stress, emotional stress, physical stress,
Right.
not moving around enough, incorrect food, emotional
Yeah. And I think the
discomfort.
danger with hearing, oh, stress is just like, oh, stress is normal. Everyone is stressed. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, but there's different levels of normal for each
Hmm.
person. And,
Right.
we should have the tools to check in and manage it and all that stuff. So it was interesting that he was
Yeah.
correct. At the time, I
Hmm.
was oh God, I was
You
so
felt.
mad at him.
Of course, let's look at it. Of course you were, because you were vomiting and uncomfortable, and then he didn't. That was like not his domain. Like it was like like your physiological self is checking. I have nothing else for you. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Right.
infuriating. It's
Yeah.
infuriating when you don't feel well and you're like, what?
Yeah.
And it's incredibly frustrating. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are in that scenario where they get
Hmm.
somebody said that to them and they're like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Right. Right. And I think at the time they were trying to prescribe me all these
Hmm.
medications. And I've never been too big on personally trying to take medications like daily.
Hmm.
Like obviously if I need an antibiotic or something, but I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. And now, of course, I think there's much more awareness around like, there's different practitioners to
Yeah.
see and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just if if you hear that stress or emotions could be causing you physical ailments,
Hmm.
it's not dismissive.
No.
It's actually, there are people like Rachel who will listen to you and try to work through, because
Yeah.
I know that you piece things together for people that
Yeah. That's part of the right. Build the puzzle.
yeah.
Do the
And so
detective work.
mhm.
Yeah, because it is overwhelming. Because if somebody's really uncomfortable and then they're like, okay, so I know it's some people know they know it's stress. They just they know they're stressed out and they know something super uncomfortable and or scary is happening in their body and they can't work out what to do about that. Everyone needs help with that. I need help. We all like
I think so too.
I mean, we're not built to be hermits trying to figure this out by ourselves. Like
I
we're
know. And
social
also,
creatures. Yeah.
our culture is very like go, go, go,
Hmm.
productivity. So there's a lot of stress here
Yes.
particularly. So.
There is. It's a very, I mean, even to compare ourselves like to our counterparts in Europe, you know, we don't um, take our vacations as much. We're not encouraged to as much.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's starting to shift in some places, but yeah, no, that it's like the busy go, just kind of power through it, drink some more energy drinks, take some more ibuprofen. And I'm like, no, don't,
I hate
everybody
it.
stop. We
I
can
know.
figure this out. We can figure it
I
out.
know. It's like, wait, just pause. But a lot of people don't have the privilege to pause. So that's
It's
another
true.
thing.
That's another thing. That's another thing too. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for people who are interested in acupuncture, but they're
Hmm.
like thinking that you're going to just stab them to death with needles and it's going to hurt really bad, there's going to
Right.
be blood shooting everywhere. What do you say to them?
So this is what, depending on the clinic you show up in, this is really generally how all of us are trained to not just, throw needles at you without paying some attention to what's going on. So whether that's in a community setting, so somebody could go to a community clinic where there's other people being treated at the same time. It could be one-on-one. There are medical doctors doing acupuncture in their offices. There are licensed acupuncturists. So all the settings are different. But if you come and see someone who has, say, a comprehensive training in this medicine, generally speaking, you're going to do a little bit of chatting most of the time. They're going to take an intake and want to see like your health history and just some things about life and what's going well, what's not going well, so that we can start to make an assessment. And then we're going to want to chat about it a little bit. Now, every office will do that differently. So depending on where the person is trained, it may be like 10 minutes of a chat. It could be 40 minutes of a chat. Just depends on the way the person practices. But you get to tell your practitioner about what's going on with you and how you're doing. They'll have questions. We look at your tongue. We look at your pulse. Some people feel bellies or arms and legs. We like to feel what are called the acupuncture channels. We like to also feel the temperature of the body. So there's different temperatures on different parts of the body, which can give us information about regulating. There's channels all over the body, which is where the energy flows and the way that the energy flows. So some of us will feel for that. And then we put the needles in. And so sometimes it's one needle, sometimes it's 20. It depends again on the office and the setting. It could be your ears, it could be your face, it could be your belly, it could be your arms, legs, it could be your back. It just depends what's going on. And we have other tools too. So there's lots of different hands-on therapies as well. So there's gua sha, which is a gentle scraping to help the blood move. There's cups. A lot of us have seen that on Hollywood people, the little round, like they look like bruises. They're not actually bruises, but it's just like a suction cup and it helps to move things out of the body. There's there are people who do tuina, which is more massage technique. There's moxibustion, which is a warming technique. So and there's herbs, there's food, there's essential oils. I mean, we all have kind of a mixed tool bag of what we can do. And so it may not always be needles. And so I also say that for the folks who are like, I don't know how I feel about the actual needle part, you can still go see someone and have other tools and then work up to the needles if you're not sure how you feel about that. And so it depends on, who, like what the provider does. And then they all feel different to each. I mean, you could probably speak to that. It's like each one
Mm-hmm.
can feel different, and sometimes you don't feel them, and sometimes you feel all of them, and sometimes they're hot or cold, or you could tell about your experience.
Yeah. So I've had them on stomach, ankles, back, and I must say the most painful one was on the foot.
Yeah,
Which I
sometimes the feet
wasn't
are
expecting. I
sensitive.
think I had it in my ear too for a headache one
I
day.
think
That
so.
was it was painful, but it released so much of that headache. So
Yeah.
yeah, they don't all hurt. There's not blood pouring everywhere. I
No,
mean, some people might bleed a little bit more than others, but it's nothing like a
it's like a
bloodbath.
drop or two. It's not
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's not like getting your blood drawn,
Mm-mm.
bleeding.
And one of I remember this so vividly. I had a session with you, Rachel, and I was like nervous about my book, something about my book coming out, and we boiled it down, and you actually were like, okay, I think there's some toxic emotional energy still trapped in there, and you were working with points on my back, and you said there was like a lot of it was red, and there was like a lot of heat coming out, and it was because it was like stored kind of emotions that really needed to get going. So, yeah, that was awesome. It was
That was good,
interesting.
right? It is
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, so sometimes people will cool, they'll feel heat coming off of their bodies. I always like to tell people it's really different than getting your blood drawn or getting like a flu shot or something. Because I think a lot of us, when we think of needle, we think of an injection that we've had
Mhm.
before, and it's really different than that. We're looking at the sensation, even if it's a little uncomfortable, it's a chi sensation. So it's the energy moving in the body so the body can regulate itself. And that can be sometimes people are like, oh, it like zapped or itched or I barely felt it. And other people
Mhm.
can really feel that energy moving for a while. It just depends on the person and the day, really.
Yeah. The first time I had it done, I did feel all that energy moving. It was like I compared it to the first time I had my own chakras balanced. I felt like I was like soaring, like up and down, and that's exactly what happened during the acupuncture session.
It's pretty, yeah. I think if people have had any like chakra work, Reiki,
Mhm.
um, cranial sacral, sometimes massage or like facials, just the body work of that can kind of move the energy in a similar way.
Mhm.
So people are familiar with any kind of energy work or body work might be like, oh, this is a little bit familiar. Feels a little
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think like I didn't really expect that to be honest, just from needles, but it really gets those channels flowing. So
It's so
it's
great.
great. I agree with you. I think everyone should go get it if you can, of course, and if right now if you feel comfortable being in person and all that
Mhm.
stuff. Um, but yeah, there's nothing that acupuncture couldn't at least help with a little bit, I feel like. Like the
Yeah.
list is just so
It
long.
it's so long. And I think it's helpful because even when there's something like, and this happens, I've actually had a couple of people with spinal injuries recently. It's just, people are like their discs are slipping. I have a couple of people right now dealing with that. And that it becomes a really nice marriage between the medicine I have and the medicine that our like surgical physicians have, because sometimes not all spinal stuff, but some spinal stuff, if you really have something happening and like hitting into the spinal cord that's causing nerve disharmony, sometimes you do really need a good surgeon. And but having the ability to help people sort of manage the stress and discomfort of having to go into surgery or recovering from surgery, so they're getting, that's even brilliant. So we have things all the way from working on healing things that no one has been able to get answers to, especially like autoimmune stuff,
Mhm.
painful things like like there's a whole host of like rheumatoid things like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, lupus, fibromyalgia, all these things that um, we also have. I mean, the host, you've got multiple sclerosis patients. Like we have folks that are, if they're undergoing chemotherapies or they're undergoing radiation and they're uncomfortable from that, it's not like we're still going to support. It's like you got to go get your chemo done. Let's see
Mhm.
what we can do to help you in between. And so we have everything like that. And then the stuff we kind of work on that doesn't need any Western science with it, that can be addressed with one system of medicine. And I mean, it is actually boundless what's available. It's
Mhm.
boundless and it's going to help at some level, whether that's all levels or one of the levels to make the other part a little easier, which is pretty cool.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So cool.
it is so cool.
If you can do it, just go for it.
Yeah.
Last question. So
Hmm.
I know that with Chinese medicine, the seasons come into play in our bodies. So now we're in spring.
Yeah.
Any suggestions or recommendations on how to get the body into the spring season.
Yeah, I do. So in the spring season, it's really important to move. Um, it doesn't have to be fitness. It could be fitness. So for people who love their fitness, then love it up a little more. For everyone like me who's a little more like, I was on the couch a lot this winter. I didn't go outside that much, like enough. It's like take a walk, do a dance in the living room, run up and down the stairs a couple times. It's really important to just move the chi because in spring is the most moving. It's like the initiation of the movement. In winter, we were potentiating. Whatever that looked like for you, it looked like for you. Everyone has their version of it. And then spring is time to move. So we want to make sure we're stretching. It's like it could even be, if you're working from home right now or you're sitting on metro for a long time getting to a couple of different gigs, whatever it is, take some time to stretch. And that is really important to just like engage the attachments and the muscles and like kind of get them moving again. And then if you like fitness, go for it. That movement's really important. Creative expression is also really important in the spring. So whatever that means, if you love math and you're really like creative mathematician, then like have at it. If you like beading or painting, have at that. If you like singing in the car, have at that. It's like really important to just move the energy, especially that comes from the middle up. So it's
Mhm.
this like part of it. We all have energy all over the body, and it's about kind of moving that part of us that's kind of gets excited when it's sunny, even if you don't like it when it's hot out. There's something about that sunshine that's like, oh, right, I'm supposed to wake up now. That kind of like that birth energy of the spring.
Mhm.
So it's important to move and it's important to be creatively expressed. And if somebody has been really, really busy and not been able to find a lot of that, it doesn't have to be like an hour of your day. It can, everyone's in a different scenario. So it may be that it's, downloading a book to listen to while you're making dinner. And that for you, like reading, but reading in your ears now, because if you're not sitting with a book, just like feels really good to hear a good story, something like that, gardening, anything. So those two things are really important. And then of course I love to tell everybody to hydrate all year long. But now is a really good time for that because it is going to get warmer and everything's going to move faster. And if we were feeling a little dry over winter, it's not going to get better in spring and summer. So it's like there's this piece of nourishing ourselves too. That's really vastly important.
Yay! Do you have
Yeah.
any food or herb recommendations?
For this time of year, all the like sour foods and all the kind of spring greens. So anything new in the spring. So like strawberries will come out in spring and before they get too sweet and they're still a little tart is really, really excellent for your well-being at this time of year. Lemon and lime is good. And then all the spring vegetables, like we're gonna see like asparagus and cucumbers and things like that start to make their way a little faster than some of the other things. So all of that. And then like if you're into sprouts, like if
Mm.
you can get your hands on good sprouts at the store, you want to sprout your own, whatever, any kind, because it's like the shoot of the seed, right? It's like the spring of the seed. So all of these like baby lettuces, all of the like the shoots and the bean sprouts and the sprouts of all the kinds, those are great for this time of year.
Yay! Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I had fun today,
you're welcome.
Rachel,
Me
so
too.
thanks for hopping on. Where can we find you?
Well, I'm online in a few places. So people can find me on my website, which is just rachelbrumberger.com, just like my name is showing up here in the
I
little
will
corner.
link everything,
We'll look
but
it all up.
yeah.
And then on Instagram, I'm at really Rachel B. And then I'm also on Facebook it's just my Rachel Brumberger L.A.C. is my page there. Am I somewhere else? I'm not a Twitter person, so I'm not there. I don't have anything exciting on Pinterest except some like really cute pictures of other people's fingernails and some recipes. Trying to think that wouldn't be the place, but those three, it would really be Facebook, Instagram, and just my website.
Cool. And are you still taking virtual appointments
I
or
am,
okay.
yeah. So I am in person now, and I do still have telehealth available. So telehealth is nice because it's great if you want to come into clinic and you're not like, I need to meet you first before you get there in person, or if you're not ready to come to clinic. And also, it's nice because some folks, we don't live close enough to each other to make clinic accessible, but we can still do some coaching through that Chinese medical lens, which is really nice.
Mhm. Cool. Okay. And her clinic is in Bethesda. So
Yeah.
if you're in the area and you want to check her out, I will post everything in the description area. So that's it for today. Thank you
Thanks, everyone.
again.
Nina,
All right. I hope you have a great day, Rachel.
you too.